What's up, everybody? Cecil Shorts III here. Welcome to Bleav in Texans podcast. It feels good to be back. I was dealing with nothing bad, but some family things, different transitions, new job, did some traveling with some vacations with the family, did some work with the NFL and the Texans out in Mexico, promoting flag football. So I'm excited to be back with y'all. We got a lot to talk about, and a lot to get to this upcoming week. We're only a few weeks out from training camp, which is a lot of fun. But I think first, we need to acknowledge what's going on in Central Texas with the flooding in Kirk County. Just want to have our thoughts and our prayers with all the individuals, the families involved there. Just want to show love and let them know, hey, we love you. We're thinking about you. We know it's a serious thing going on with the floods. Many lives have been lost already. People are still looking to be found. So we're just praying, and we're just you just know, Kirk County, you're in our thoughts. One thing I love about Texas, the states, is anything that happens, um, the state comes together. And you've seen it from former Houston Texans like J.J. Watt donated $100,000 to Kirk County, if I'm not mistaken, and others are giving their time, giving their money, giving things to help those families in need out there to recover from that flood situation. So just know, Kirk County, we love you. We're praying for you. Just want to start off with that first. So next, we got to talk about Texans, right? PFF came out with something where the offensive line were ranked from 1 to 32. And just to give you an update on where the Texans were ranked, they weren't in the top 31. So we'll get to that in a second. Then I also hit on today a few position groups on the offensive side of the ball that I think we need to really look in and dive into and kind of pay attention to during training camp. So let's start with the offensive line. As I mentioned, Pro Football Focus put out a list of the top 32 offensive line as far as the groups. The best offensive line group from 1 down to 32, 1 obviously being the best, and 32 being the worst in the NFL. And the Texans were voted number 32. And I can't say that I'm surprised, but I don't think that tells the whole entire story. I think what everybody worries about or thinks about with the Houston Texans coming into this season is, well, last year they struggled. CJ Stroud had a decline a tad bit. He wasn't the same. And then they get rid of Shaq Mason, who's a big offensive line name, who's supposed to come in last year and do some big things, as well as Laramie Tunsil. They traded Laramie Tunsil, right? And got some draft capital from Washington. So I think people are more concerned about who left and who's actually still here or who actually came in, right? And I get it, because if you look at the names that came in, the Trent Brown, Laken Tomlinson, and some others, there's not huge names that will be like, okay, they're still young and in their prime. They can come out there, and Cam Robinson, they can come out there and really make an impact. It's more of a few older guys, right? They've been around the league a little bit, like Andrews plays center. And it doesn't like really ring a bell. But I think when you look at the 2024, the reason why they struggled last year on the offensive line was mainly because of coaching. Coaches need players and players need coaching. But when you come to the line of scrimmage and you watch games, when you watch the Green Bay Packers game, you watch the Minnesota Vikings game from last year, when you watch the Indianapolis Colts game week 1 last year, there's numerous games where guys are looking confused on the offensive line. Guys are not sure what to do. The same mistakes are being made in week 1, in week 7, in week 12, in week 17. And to me, that's a coaching thing. That's the offensive line coach, and that's the offensive coordinator. Whatever was happening last year with Bobby Slowick, it just wasn't resonating with the players. He did not do a good job of putting his players in position that they understood the assignment, they understood what to do, how to go about it, and get the job done. Too many times, normal stunts, normal blitzes, nothing exotic coming at the Texans offensive line, and they couldn't handle it, not because they weren't talented enough, because they were confused on the communication. They were confused on who they're supposed to pick up, right? They were confused on what was supposed to happen if this happens and that happens. And to me, that's a lot on coaching. Yes, the players played, and some guys weren't flat out good enough. Kenyon Green was just flat out not good enough. He got embarrassed Thursday night against the Jets. He just was not good enough, right? But you look at it, the totality of the situation, it was the coaching as well. And when you look at this year, I think people are overlooking the coaching aspect. There was some type of disconnect in the building from the offensive line coach and the offensive coordinator, right? And I think with those two guys being gone now and bringing new bread in, bringing new people in, who guys that work together, Cole Popovich, the new offensive line coach, he worked with Nick Caley in New England. So they speak the same language, right? They understand the same things. They have the same similar mindset on how they want to run the ball, what type of lineman they're looking for, what type of nastiness they want. And I think that's what's needed. A lot of people could criticize the Laramie Tunsil trade from the outside looking in, not understanding. Hey, we're not saying that Laramie Tunsil is not good. He only gave up 2 sacks last year. I get that. He is the outstanding left tackle in the pass protection. Does a really good job. Struggle with some false starts at times, but he's a really good player. That's why the Texans got the haul for him. But they're looking for a different type of tackle, a different type of offensive lineman. And when you have a guy in that building that is different than what they want to do you got to get rid of them. And I'm not mad at them for getting rid of a good player. They got a good haul for him back, and they're focused on how they want to build the organization. I'm sorry, how they want to build the offensive line. They wanted to look a certain way. They want a certain nastiness to the offensive line, a certain dog mentality to the offensive line that wasn't there in previous years. And honestly, probably has not been there since the Arian Foster, or even going back to Dwayne Brown and Wade Smith and those guys, when they were on the offensive line, really making things happen, right? So I'm not surprised that they were ranked number 32, but I think you got to put things in perspective, right? And I think people overlook, it's not about 1 or 2 big names. It's about how cohesive can this offensive line be. Now, the question is, what 5 offensive linemen are going to be out there? That's the question, right? That's the question. That's on Nick Caley, Cole Popovich to find out what's the best 5 to put out there. Is it Juice Shrugs out there? Is it Lakin? Is so many guys you can put, like you can Patterson? Is it Ersery? Is he in the top 5? There's so many guys you have to figure out. I think that's going to be the challenge. But once you find the 5, then you can be able to they can be able to build that relationship, build that communication, get that cohesiveness going, and have a good year. You don't need to have a great season this year. You don't need a ton of, you don't need a top 5 offensive line from the Texans this year. I'll be honest with you. Like, you look at number 1 on the list was Philadelphia. I think Detroit was in the top 5. I think Indianapolis Colts were in the top 10. You don't need a top 10 offensive line production this year to be a really good team. You need improvement. You need to be on the same page. Your coach needs to be able to coach you, and you understand, go out there and execute. Like, it doesn't have to be like the best 5 big names out there is what I'm trying to say. You can find a good offensive line within the group that you have. They stay together, they stay healthy, build that cohesiveness, and then you'll see them get better as time goes. Because you got to think, last year, just being honest, they were right in the middle of the road, honestly. They were 15th in the rush as far as offensive. They were 15th in the run game. They were 15th in the passing game, which is middle of the road, right? And dead in the middle. If you add Nick Caley and Cole Popovich to the equation, add some better communication, and say you finish higher than 15 in both categories, you're probably a much better team. I bet CJ has a better year. I bet Joe Mixon has a better year. I think just to understand, you don't need a top 10, top 5 offensive line. You need guys to work hard. You need guys to be nasty. You need guys to work together. That's what it is. Be on the exact same page. And of course, be healthy, right? We all know that part. Of course, you got to be healthy. But I'm not surprised, going back to the rank, I'm not surprised they're ranked 32. I think people on the outside looking in don't really understand why they traded Laramie Tunsil and got rid of Shaq Mason, don't really understand what was really going on. If you go in depth, again, it was a lot of miscommunications. And it's nothing to do with talent. There were a few guys that I'll be honest with you, Shaq Mason didn't play that good last year. He had a down year, but he was older. Maybe his time was needed. Maybe he needed a different scene, right? Laramie played well. He struggled in the beginning of the year, especially with false starts, but Laramie played well overall. But I just think when you look at the offensive line, don't be surprised if they're a lot better than 32. Maybe not top 15, top 10, whatever, top 5, but any improvement in that offensive line is going to help this whole entire offense tremendously. But I also think a good offensive scheme helps the offensive line as well. Like, when a quarterback's able to get the ball out quickly and efficiently, you're making the offensive line better. So their grades from different sources around the league will be better, right? They'll look better as a team because the quarterback's getting the ball out quickly. And it's going to be interesting what type of scheme Nick Caley wants to run in the running game and the passing game. Is he going to switch things up? Is it going to be pass first because you have all these weapons? Or is it going to be more of a continue to be run first, hard nose? Is it going to be mid zone? Is it going to be outside zone? Is it going to be a power type scheme, a gap type scheme? What are you bringing to the table? Because all that matters when it comes to offensive line play. You got to figure out what's the best scheme for my offense of line. When the run game, what's the best scheme for our passing? How are we going to handle blitzes? How are we going to handle hots? All this falls into this category. So you can't just, to me, it's just so many nuances that go into offensive line. They can't just be, oh, they don't got the big name guys. They can't do it no more. That's not the case. That's not the case at all. There's tons of offensive linemen. Offense. There's tons of good teams that don't have the huge names on the offensive line that play extremely well together. And I think that's what you can get here with the Houston Texans, Nick Caley and Cole Popovich. So not surprised by the ranking of 32. I just think there's a lot more to it than just looking at the roster and saying they don't got a big name. They got older guys, whatever the case may be. One person I would look out for is Ersery, though. I had a chance to sit down with Ersery at a rookie. It was a rookie versus, not rookie verse, but it was a rookie and legends dinner for the Houston Texans. And legends just mean former Texans that played in the league, right? So we got to sit down with different rookies and have dinner with them, kind of tour the city. We went to the Astros Stadium with them, went to the Rockets facility with them, and then got to sit down at Papados and eat pretty good with them. And Ersery, his mindset is, hey, I should have went first round, and I'm coming to prove and coming to take spots. And he looked so determined at dinner just talking to me. He looks so so focused. He's just so locked in right now. Like, hey, this is what's about to happen. And he clearly said they know what they got. Nick Caserio, D'Amico, they know what they got. They got somebody special. And I'm like, oh wow. And I'm like, this how you feel? Like, that's how I feel. See, they're like, I'm ready to get after it. I'm ready to go. And that's the type of mindset you want. I think that's what they're looking for when it comes to the offensive line room. They don't want necessarily, it's not a knock on Laramie or anybody. They don't want necessarily the pretty boy type. They don't want the showmanship. They want a dog. They want somebody who's going to put somebody in the ground every play. And when you watch Ersery's film at Minnesota versus Abdul Carter versus a number of guys in the Big Ten, he dominated and he played extremely well. He can move his feet well. So that's a name I think we need to keep an eye on because he'll be a lot of fun to watch. If he can turn into a really good left tackle and learn from Cam and learn from Trent, those guys, the older guys in the room, it could be a special year for Ersery, but also that could be your left tackle for the long run with CJ Stroud and company. Looking forward to training camp. Training camp is, what is today? Today is July 7th or 8th. July 8th, Tuesday, July 8th. So training camp is about 2-3 weeks away. And then there's a few position groups I really think we need to pay attention to that aren't being talked about enough. We talked about offensive line just now. We know O-line is going to be watched, right? We know they got to improve. We know that's going to be the big talk of training camp. Who's going to be the starting five? Who's going to be in what position and where, right? Where will Titus Howard be? Will he be left guard, right tackle? Where's he going to play? But I think two positions on offense, outside of offensive line and outside of receiver too. I'm a former receiver and I love receiver. We all know about Higgins. We know about Noel. We know about Christian Kirk and of course the number one receiver on the team, Nico Collins. They're going to hold it down, right? That's an exciting group. We can talk about that in another episode. It's an exciting group. But I think the running back room is a room you got to pay attention to. All right, so the running back room, I'm not as sold on Nick Chubb as other people are. I think people are more excited about the name than the actual product on the field. He's not been the same in a couple years. Last year, he broke his foot, but before that, he had a drastic knee injury the previous season, which was his second multi-ligament knee injury, right? So for me, it's kind of wait and see. Low risk, high reward type situation. If he can be a power back, if he can spell Joe Mixon a little bit, because Joe Mixon is your workhorse. Love Joe Mixon. Love me some Joe Mixon. He can do it all in the passing game, the running game. Just need him to stay healthy. Had over 1,000 yards last year. He's one of only, I want to say he's the only running back in the last 4 years to have 1,300 scrimmage yards and 9 touchdowns in every single season the last 4 years. That's a big deal. So when you added Nick Chubb that can possibly do some things, it can be good and it looks good on paper. I'm just not sold that he's the answer. The closer you get to 30, As we all know, in the NFL, you're considered old, especially for a running back, and especially for a running back with multiple knee surgeries, with multiple ligaments being involved, right? So me being a from Cleveland, Ohio, a former a big time Browns fan, I just don't see a lot of upside for Nick Chubb. I'm hoping I'm wrong. I'm hoping he can come in and be dynamic and be the same guy he was. But in reality, I think he can be a short yardage guy in the goal line, maybe spell, gives you some healthy yards when Joe Mixon needs a break. I don't think he's going to be much more than that. If I'm wrong, great. But I think the person you need to watch is Woody Marks. That's who I got my eye on because I'm interested to see what Nick Caley wants to do. Like you brought in a guy, I Bleav Woody was in the fourth round, who was one of the top receiving backs in the draft. I want to say at 1 year, not at USC, I think it was Mississippi State, he had 88 catches. Like he was unbelievable when it comes to catching the ball, getting outside, catching the ball, whether it was screens, whether it was running routes out of the backfield, whether it was him lining up in the slot or even outside. He's dynamic. He could be another slot receiver and somebody you could use down to down, and you can have him and Joe Mixon on the field together. You can have him, Joe Mixon, Christian Kirk, Higgins, you can have Nico, all these guys on the field together. So Woody is a guy that has multiple skill sets because he can run in between tackles too. He did a really good job at USC running in between tackles, making guys miss, being physical when he needs to. That's the guy I think you need to watch. His running back room is going to be interesting. Joe Mixon is the workload. I mean, it's the workhorse, right? But he's also getting closer to 30. But he's proven he can play no matter what. He's a dog. I want to say he was top 5 in rushing last year before he went down early with an ankle on that hip drop tackle that was not called, which to this day makes me upset. But if Nick Chubb can do some things, but I think Woody Marks, I think is going to end up being the number 2 back for the Houston Texans. And I tell you what, I wouldn't count out Dameon Pierce either. I wouldn't count out Dameon Pierce. If if the offense is set up for Damian to run downhill, and again, we don't know what Nick Kelly wants to do, but if the offense is set up where all Damian has to do is run downhill explosively and not have to read a ton of things at the line of scrimmage, I think you'll see a lot of what you saw in Damian's rookie year. So I wouldn't count Damian out, but I think that running back room as a whole is very, very interesting. And then lastly, I think the tight end room is somebody we need to watch. That's the room that's going to be interesting. When you look at a Cade Stover, who they drafted in the fourth round last year, shows some sparks. When you look at a Brevin Jordan, who's coming back from, I Bleav, an ACL, who has some sparks the year before, very fast, very good in the passing game. When you look at Dalton Schultz, somebody you paid a couple years ago to have a good year last year, was kind of a down year for him. And I wasn't. There was rumors that the Texans were interested in the tight end. I don't know if that's true, but I would not be surprised. I know for a fact they were trying to trade up. I wouldn't be surprised if they were trying to trade up for one of those tight ends, mainly Tyler Warren, right? Who's I think is extremely special. But you look at a Dalton Schultz who had a down year. Can this be a bounce back year for him? Nick Caley, I talked about him a lot today. Offensive coordinator, tight ends coach with the Rams, tight ends coach with the New England Patriots. He knows tight end. So this group, can he develop? Can he find a way to get the best out of Brevin Jordan consistently? Can he find a way to really get Luke Lakey, the rookie from, I Bleav, is from Iowa? He dealt with a lot of injuries at Iowa, but he's a playmaker. He can play. I watched Todd McShay really go in depth about him for a little bit, about how talented he is. Just worried about some injuries he had and couldn't really get over that injury bug. But you know the history of Iowa tight ends. Look at George Kittle. Look at numerous guys that are top tight ends in the league now. They came from Iowa, so he has that background, right? Can he come into play and really develop over this season and really make some plays for us? Can it be Cade Stover, right? CJ Stroud is very familiar with Cade Stover from former Ohio State Buckeye. So this room, I'm really intrigued about. Not only because I think somebody needs to step up and be that go-to guy, not only in the passing game, but in the blocking as well, right? Cade Stover, to me, is probably the best blocker from what I can see. Schultz struggled last year. And again, that's on him, and that's on the coaching. So Brevin Jordan, I haven't seen him in a year, but he's not the best blocking tight end. He can do it, but I think Cade by far is the best in the room, maybe even the Luke Lackey, right? But when you look at this room, can Nick Caley help develop this room? Can he really get the best out of this group? Him knowing tight end, him coach some of the best tight ends in New England, right? Some of the best tight ends ever played this game in New England with Gronk and a few others. So I'm excited about this room because I want to see the development. I want to see who can step up and be the guy in the middle of the field. And maybe it's not a tight end. Maybe they're more blocking this year, and you got more Noel and Christian Kirk in the slots being the underneath routes for CJ Stroud. So it's going to be interesting. So we talked about O line, talked about running back. We know what the receivers are going to bring to the table, but tight end is very interesting in running back in training camp. Those are two spots we need to watch. So it's good to be back, y'all. I love y'all. Please like, subscribe. So on all your platforms to the Bleav in Texans podcast. We'll be back this Thursday to dig into some more questions and some more training camp position groups. But until then, as always, go Texans.